fried lobster on a stick, spam is a luxury item, and what we can learn about Korea from the TV show MASH. This week, we're in Seoul, South Korea.
Traveling the world to bring you delicious dishes, tasty beverages, and interesting experiences. This is the Destination Eat Drink Podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
I'm Brent Peterson. Welcome to Destination Eat Drink, the travel podcast for foodies. Destination Eat Drink is the place where food and travel come together, not only here on the Destination Eat Drink podcast, but also on the Destination Eat Drink YouTube channel and at destinationeatdrink.com. And this week, we're in Seoul, South Korea, for the best street food and a dish that's so addictive, it's called a narcotic. But first, if you like food and travel, be sure to rate and review the podcast and share the podcast too with your friends. You can also support Destination Eat Drink with a one-time or recurring contribution in any amount at buymeacoffee.com/destinationeatdrink. Daniel Gray was born in Korea and spent time in an orphanage before being adopted by a couple in Delaware at the age of 5. He tells me about finding his way back to Korea and how his love for food has manifested itself in many different ways over the years. Daniel also runs Seoul Eats, a food tour company that takes visitors to try the best food the city has to offer. Daniel tells me about why Johnsonville brats are popular in Seoul. He tells me about a dish called bindae duck, and he tells me about taking a Hollywood star around Seoul. Okay, I'm starving, so let's eat.
Destination Eat Drink.
Daniel Gray from Seoul Eats. Great to have you on the program. Looking forward to talking some food and drink in Seoul, South Korea.
Great to be here. I'm always up to talk about food and drink. There's a lot of great food and stuff in Seoul. So happy to be here. So, you got any questions? Have you been here?
I have not, and that's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because my whole understanding of Seoul, I'm older than you, so my understanding of Seoul started with the MASH TV show and runs through K-pop and all of the pop culture stuff that's coming over to the West now. So that's, I think, is probably not a great understanding of Seoul. So that's why I wanted to talk to you to get a better understanding, especially from a culinary point of view. But
you know what? MASH is actually a really good place to start. It's just people don't realize, the turmoil and the difficulties that the country went through, and MASH did capture some of the personal stories. I mean, in a Western comedic sort of way, but they did have some of the drama. But there were some elements of truth to that. Korea was a country that was divided, and they did need people to help them. And a lot of the stuff from MASH and from the Korean War, you had Western ingredients coming in for the first time, and it was a time when Korea was able to kind of redevelop their cuisine, find their palate, have enough food where they could just, say what they liked and not like, and rather than just being like, I need food, just give me calories. MASH is actually set in the very northern part of Seoul, which is the Uijeonbu area, and that area is famous for this dish called budae-jjigae, which is military stew, and it was baked beans, hot dogs, macaroni, kimchi, and all this other stuff thrown in a pot and boiled to make a soup. And along with that, you had, with all those ingredients, because it was processed, you had a lot of MSG and sugar and stuff that people didn't really have before. So it really kind of wakened the Korean palate. But then they were also very true to themselves, because they're like, oh, I can't just eat a hot dog. How can I just eat a hot dog?
Right.
I need rice. So they had to make it into a soup or a stew. because they also needed to stretch that meal as much as possible, and to feed as many people as possible. So you make a soup out of it. You add some kimchi and stuff because you need to have the vegetables because they're a farming culture, and yeah, it became a national dish. For a long time, it was called Johnson stew, and Johnsonville sausages are still incredibly popular here
Oh,
because of
really?
that time and region. Yeah, so there are a lot of influences that exist because of the Americans and because of all the other nations that came through to help Korea during that time. And it was a time when Korea went from being one of the poorest countries in the OECD to prospering, and a lot of that had to do with this movement called the Seimao movement, which was the New Village movement, which basically told people of that generation, we have to work very, very hard now for the future. So we must sacrifice everything now for our children. And then our children will take care of us. And everyone believed this. And it was this very, in a way, it was kind of like this communist, but very capitalistic belief. But it was like this groupthink of we need to do this together, but we need to grow the country and make as much money as possible in order to grow our nation. So kind of the opposite of what North Korea did.
Right.
So we went very, ultra like capitalistic sort of in a capitalistic direction, whereas the North Koreans, they kind of retreated and went more into like this hermit kingdom, which was South Korea before that as well. So yeah, the food really did develop during that time and before that as well, like with kimchi and everything else. Korea is a country with 4 seasons, and what that means is that you have to learn how to make the food last all year long and also to survive the very, very harsh winters. So this is where the preservation techniques of like pickling and kimchi and other things like drying vegetables and then rehydrating them to make soups and stews, all of those things kind of come into it. Also doing like different types of soy sauces and gochujang, which is a red chili paste. And, like chilies didn't even come into Korea until much later. Like in the 15th century or so, which came actually through the Portuguese missionaries that had also gone through Japan.
Exactly. Those Portuguese they're responsible for so many cuisines getting introduced to chilies because of because of going through Brazil and, Central and South America having these indigenous chilies. And before I moved to Portugal, I didn't know that. I learned that pretty quickly when I got there because it's funny because here the Portuguese really don't eat a lot of chilies other than piri piri chicken. Like that's pretty much the only spicy dish that you'll get here. But when we get some of these other cuisines, there's a large Indian population from, they had a colony in Goa, and other places that come here. Now they're bringing spicy food to Portugal, and it's increasing the interesting palette that we have here. But I did want to go back to one thing that you mentioned because it's fascinating. It's something that we don't often think about when we talk about the history of cuisine, and that is the influence of different militaries. And it got me thinking because it's something that I don't talk about often on this podcast, but occasionally I do. And, Berlin sprung to mind as a place where currywurst was invented after World War II with ingredients from all the different occupying forces in Berlin post-World War II. But the thing that struck me that I immediately thought about was when we lived in Hawaii, Spam was everywhere. And I was like, why is Spam so... I couldn't figure it out. Why is Spam so popular? And I found out it was because of the American military bases and the American soldiers. They were like, we don't like this crap. And they, so they were trading, handing it over to Hawaiians. They loved it. Now you'll see all of these dishes that have come up made with Spam simply because of the American military presence in Hawaii pre-World War II.
It's a dish that, and Spam is incredibly popular here. On certain holidays, you can give a gift set of 16 cans in
No
beautiful
way.
gift packaging, and it is a very acceptable and appreciated gift.
Wow.
So it is definitely something that people like. Yeah, Spam is the luxury luncheon ham in a can.
Oh my God.
It did go down in popularity for a little bit. And then there was a campaign in the 80s, and what they did was they equated Spam with rice, and Spam being the luxurious, wonderful, perfect side dish we call panchan to go with rice. So they connected a staple food, rice, with Spam, and they were able to just explode in popularity. And it still is extremely popular. So if you can have, and someone says, "Oh, we're gonna have Spam and rice," and they'll be, "Oh, okay, great." And then they might say, "Oh, we're gonna have a Spam like or rich ham or a knockoff version," and they're not as excited.
We want the real thing.
But the Spam here is different. It is different. It is lower in sodium content than it is in America. So a lot of the foods that do come in from overseas, they have reduced sodium. Things like luncheon meats and stuff. The nitrate content has to be reduced in order to make it into the country. So the Koreans have a definite palate. They have things that they like and they don't like.
Sure.
Like mac and cheese is just not very popular here. But
Spam, the whole family's going to be excited.
Spam is very popular. Yeah, Spam is very popular. Like probably spaghetti carbonara in a very different sort of carbonara than you would probably expect. And its sweeter sort of like cream sauce is very popular here as a dish. Yeah. And also, if you're going to a Western dining restaurant, the trinity there would be a pasta dish, a steak dish, and a salad.
Okay, you're covering all the bases there.
Yeah. It's and they share everything, which is as an American coming here, I was just like, I'm at a steak restaurant. Why are you cutting up my steak? I'm not sharing this. So yeah, it was a bit of a culture shock, but I got over it. It's okay.
Now, Daniel, you mentioned that you're an American who's now living in Korea. I think you have a really fascinating backstory. Could you share with the audience, how you wound up in America and how you wound up back in Korea?
Oh yeah. I was adopted. I was born out of wedlock in Daegu, and my mother was too poor to raise me. She tried to get my birth father to take me because during that time they have a family registry system, and it was only done through the male line. And so a boy that was not registered under the family line is called a hochok. They would essentially not have a name, and they would not be able to eventually, it would be very difficult for them to go to school, go to military, then get a job. It was like a black mark throughout your entire life. So my mother did try to get my father to take me. My stepmother was not very happy with it, especially since she had 3 other kids already. And I was the youngest one. So eventually that led to a problem where they put me up for adoption. I got adopted by an American family, and yeah, I was in an orphanage for a while, but it wasn't terrible. It was pretty nice. We all kind of, but imagine like 40 kids sleeping in one room under like one bottom blanket, one top blanket, yeah. Having meals and parties together. And we'd all hope to get adopted, and getting adopted meant that we would get a gift set that it would get like a little box, and in it would have a picture of the your potential family, and maybe getting a Hershey's chocolate bar, which is like a really big thing I remember then, and maybe getting something like a Coca-Cola. And that was like America for us,
Wow.
but we were, yeah. We were in an orphanage, and we didn't know what was going to happen. If we stayed in the orphanage too long and aged out, we would probably have to stay there and maybe work there. And there were some kids that were in that situation. I was 5 years old, and I was very lucky to have been adopted, because most people did not want kids that were older. They wanted babies.
Right, right.
So I was very lucky. I grew up in the States. I grew up in Delaware on the East Coast in the USA. And yeah, had my regular American childhood and did all the crazy stuff. Was in a bassist in a rock band, and
Hmm.
drove a car and had part-time jobs, and went to high school, went to university, worked. And then after university, I kind of evaluated my life and decided what I wanted to do. I had read Anthony Bourdain's Kitchen Confidential, and I really enjoyed cooking, and I wanted to be a chef. So then I started working in restaurants, while also I was an educator. I had a degree in education, so I was working as a substitute and working part-time jobs as teaching during the day, working in restaurants and stuff on in the evenings, bars and stuff on the weekends. And I was working at a kind of a more of a high-end sort of banquet style restaurant, and I was learning the trade there. And a chef told me, he sat down with me like after a really big service. We served a couple hundred people, and we had a couple glasses of wine in his office, and he asked me like what I wanted to do, and I said I wanted to open up a restaurant and be a chef. And I told him I was going to go to culinary school and stuff, and he said, "Don't do that. Just travel, work in restaurants, save up money, and then open up a restaurant." And I said, "Oh, okay." Because at that point, I was thinking of spending another 4 years and 2 years and another, $80,000 or whatever to go to culinary school. And at that point, and I had already had signed up and gone through initial stuff. I just said, no, let's just drop out. Well, I hadn't started, but I decided to just change my life. I applied for some teaching jobs in Korea, and I started teaching English in South Korea. Found out it was a really easy and very profitable way to make money. And then so I could work here 9, 10 months, save enough money, and travel and live in Thailand, live in Vietnam, live in the Philippines, live in Japan, travel all over, and then go back and work. And then I did that for many years. And during that time, I got back into food, but it was through writing. I started writing restaurant reviews, and I would throw dinner parties, and I would have fun with food. But there was a real lack of Western ingredients and stuff, so trying to bring some of that stuff in, trying to recreate the dishes, and that was a really fun period of my life. And then the food blog took off. I started to help reporters from like the New York Times and help people from Gourmet Magazine and National Geographic. And then I got into production. I got to meet people like Bourdain and Zimmern, and a lot of different groups from the BBC and everything. And yeah, I was like, okay, let's give this a try. But that was just a hobby. I was always teaching, kind of mainly. That was my main thing, and the food stuff was a hobby. And later on, I uh, got to work with the some of the government think tanks on cultural um, I don't know, promotion and things. And so I wrote a lot of brochures and things related to food. And then I was like, well, you know what? I went to Thailand and I loved the cooking schools and stuff over there. And I realized that South Korea didn't have anything like that. So I came back and I partnered with someone that was a chef, and we started one of the first cooking schools there, here. And then from there, um, just because the cooking school wasn't going to make enough money, we started doing evening, like night dining tours. So I had headed up the tours, and the tours took off, and eventually did much better than the cooking classes. And at that point, I was like, okay, I can go keep on teaching and doing this, where I could just try to make a career in food, and I have done that. I've made a career in food, and now I'm the inbound operator for an adventure travel company. It's called Intrepid. So, I'm probably one of the largest inbound operators for small group tours in the country right now.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the food. You talked about your tours, and I'm sure you take people to all kinds of cool places with Seoul Eats. But let's talk a little bit about some of that food. And I don't know, do you want to start with maybe street food? Is this is a pretty wide-ranging topic.
Oh yeah. I mean, street food is always evolving, and it used to be something that you would have en route to where you were going.
Right.
Or so it would be like tteokbokki, which is like spicy rice cake in a little tiny cup, or odeng, which are fish cakes that are kind of kind of I don't know. They put it on a stick. They put everything on a stick. Hot dogs on a stick, like sliced up tornado potatoes on a stick, uh, rice cakes with sausages dipped in red chili paste on a stick, everything on a stick. So that was the big thing. Street food used to be something that was just something that you would have out with friends. It wasn't a meal. It was just something that you have as I don't know how to explain it. It's more like you want to change the atmosphere of the mood. You want to have fun. It's never something that's supposed to be like filling, you know? So when Koreans go out, it's like a good night out means that you did like six, seven different things. You had some street food, you went to karaoke, you went to an arcade place, you might have eaten some barbecue, you might have had some coffee, you might have went to get dressed up and take funny pictures. It's like all of these different things together. You're taking several weeks of experiences and cramming it into like a day. And that's fun. And that's where street food comes in. It's like something that's supposed to be cheap and interesting and fun. And then you just, you enjoy, but then you go and do something else. It's a really fun and exciting way to eat.
Is there a particular hot spot in Seoul? I mean, Seoul is a massive city. This is why it's so difficult to
Yeah.
distill it down into one thing. But I'm wondering, is there
Yeah.
a particular place where you would tell people to go if they're coming there?
I mean, it's nowadays with COVID, things aren't open all the time, but the hotspots that are still available for street food is Myeongdong has a lot of good street food stuff. I think it's incredibly touristy and overpriced,
Hmm.
but it's still fun to go there. If you're a tourist, you won't mind. As a local, I find that it's become a little bit too much, but for a tourist coming here, they would find it really fun. But you're getting stuff like um, lobster on a stick with cheese and sauce, and it's like $20.
Hmm.
Or you get hot dog, which is like the fried stuffed cinnamon sugar donuts with seeds and other stuff there. Yeah, I mean, you'll get giant fried squid that, needs two giant like uh, poking sticks because one will not hold the whole thing up.
Oh,
And yeah, you'll get lemonades, different types of aids. They love like sparkling aids with lemon and other stuff in it. Crazy like cotton candy stuff. It's it's not really authentic. It's oh, and what else are they doing? They're doing the uh it was kind of an ice cream with marshmallow on the outside, which that they will like roast a marshmallow on the outside and you still have ice cream on the inside. Bungobang, which is like a waffle fish bread that's stuffed with custard or red bean or chocolate or anything now. I mean, in Myeongdong, it's like the show where you have people trying to create this new trend, so it's a bit more creative, a bit more experimental. Um, Hongdae has a lot of good street food, and I like the ambience a bit more because you have a lot of kids that are doing the busking on the street. So you have some street food areas, and then you have performers there as well, which is really nice. And Insadong has some good street food stalls still, and all the markets like Gwangjang Market definitely still has some stuff, but it's not real street food. You still have to kind of sit down, but you're like sitting in the market
mm-hmm.
and eating. Yeah, so that's kind of the difference. Or you're like you're gonna take it and you're gonna get it to go, take it home. There might be some little street food things like the ugly donuts, which are like really misshapen, like uh uh leavened flour donuts that's dipped in sugar. But it's the yeah, the street food and the markets are fine, but it's some places you have to like take a quick seat. You have to sit down and eat it.
You mentioned that street food traditionally was eaten going to do another thing. Like it wasn't a thing of itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now street food has become a thing upon itself. But that's how I used to think of street food. That's when I was growing up, when I was a kid. This will tell you how old I am. Back in the early '80s, when we were
Mm-hmm.
going out to party, that's what we would do. We would go grab a quick something to eat, and then we'd go someplace else. It wasn't about the food. It was about, what we were doing next. And this was just to kind of prime the pump and get, your stomach ready for the abuse that it was going to face later on in the evening. But now it's become, there are Michelin starred street food places that are out there now. And it's become a really, fancy. And you talked about some of these innovative places, which makes it fascinating. But, as I was thinking of this, I was like, I would always, be going out to get some beer afterwards. And I thought it must be a beer culture because I haven't heard of Korean wine. So I'm wondering what is the drinking culture like in Korea? Do we drink beer there? What do we do?
Oh, it's a soju culture, and beer is still popular. Yeah, beer is popular. Beer is increasing in price, so it's kind of going back more towards soju. Um, or they do somek, which is it's a soju and beer bomb. So you take beer, you add a shot of soju, and you mix it all up and drink it. It's it's refreshing. It's fun. It's a very social drinking scene. Um, High-end whiskeys are like single malts and stuff are really popular here, like whiskey bars. So they've become quite popular, like really good cocktail bars as well. They're, mixologists have become kind of rock stars, and they've won quite a few contests overseas as well. So the scene is evolving, but if you're talking about like the mainstream regular people, the college kids and stuff, they're gonna go out and they're gonna have soju, and they might have a beer with it, but it's with cost, it's going back to soju. Like if you have soju with a lettuce wrap that has a sizzled piece of pork belly, a little bit of samjang, which is a fermented bean paste sort of thing, and a raw clove of garlic. Wrap it all up and eat it. It's just a really good um, match and degreaser at the same time.
Right, right. One thing
Yeah.
I like to do when I'm exploring a new city is to go to the market. I'm sure there's tons of
Hmm.
markets to go and check out, but I did want to ask you about a specific one. You can talk about this one or one of your favorites if you want, Daniel. The Guangjiang market. What can you tell me about
Hmm.
this place? What should I look for when I go there?
Well, I mean, Gwangjang Market is it's a really interesting sort of outlier market, like where most of the markets have died out. This one has become more popular. Gwangjang Market is not actually a food market. It is a clothing market for hanboks, which are the Korean traditional wedding dresses. And the food market area was the area where people that worked in the dressmaking and the fabric district would stop over and get something to eat. And the food there tends to be, it's like old fashioned, like japchae sort of style. Japchae is like glass noodle salad sort of thing, and they would do it in a street food style. So you could get a dish that would take someone a long time to make at home, and they made a fast food version of it. Or you can get binde duck, which is a mung bean pancake, which they're really famous for. But the the mung beans, they don't have the starch content and everything to kind of bind it really quickly, for a long time. So you would have to add flour or something to kind of keep it together. But at Gwangjang Market, what they did was they just used a lot more oil. So it's basically deep frying. So it's a very crispy, almost like a potato laka sort of like a flavor. And other things they have there, they have things like uh, gopchang, which is like uh, intestines that are like marinated and then stir fried in the chili sauce. There's sashimi. There's mayak kimbap, which is little rice rolls that you dip in this really, mayak means narcotic, and
Oh,
it's this dipping sauce that has like mustard and vinegar and sugar and MSG, of course. So people were, you're eating it and you're going, wow, I don't know why, but I just can't stop eating this. But yeah, it hit all of those flavor profiles that you just didn't have before. So imagine that the first time you had Chinese food, like, and it's loaded with MSG, and you're just like, I don't know why, but I just keep eating this. And this is how a lot of Korean food in the street food markets became really popular and almost addicting because they weren't used to having sugar. They weren't used to having enough flour to make noodles like kalguksu, which is the knife cut noodles. That was a luxurious thing because before that, the noodles, the chanchiguksu, which are banquet noodles, was something that you would only have with weddings, at weddings, actually.
okay.
Yeah, and the texture was very different as well. It was this very soft, not al dente at all. It was just kind of like almost like a mushy sort of like, wheat noodle. It wasn't one of my um it wasn't one of my favorite sort of Korean noodle dishes.
You're not selling it very hard, Daniel.
No, 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 but it's something that but I understand
Sure,
the
sure.
allure to it because before it took a long time to make this very fine very thin sort of noodle, and you put it in a very light broth and you put it with like some sliced white egg and yellow egg and some seaweed and stuff, and then you would eat it. And it's something that you would only have several times a year, so people really appreciated it. But then when you have like a lot of wheat that came in from Western imports, now you could make, like heartier, thicker noodles, that have more of a chew to it.
Hmm.
And that's what Koreans really started to enjoy. And adding like the you would get like cold buckwheat noodles, like naengmyeon. And naengmyeon, there's different styles. Buckwheat is incredible. It's not really a wheat. It's a flower seed, and like soba is incredibly difficult to make. The Korean ingenuity behind it was, well, we can make it this way, but it breaks too easily. So what we will do is we'll take the buckwheat, we'll mix it with some potato starch, and then we'll use this press that goes directly from the dough into the hot water, and then we'll chill it right away. So what you get this is this very, very chewy, very hearty, full mouthfeel sort of noodle. And that's what Koreans love. And the broth is this fermented, a bit sour, radish sort of broth, which is really, it's got a little bit of beef broth in it. And you can freshen it up with a little bit of vinegar and some mustard. And for summer, it's just like, wow, this is a great dish. It kind of, it just perks up your mind and kind of, makes you feel that you are becoming, relaxed and becoming cool. It's like air conditioning for
Mm.
your soul.
I'm a big proponent of buckwheat. I make buckwheat flatbread from the little
Oh,
pods,
okay.
from the little seeds all the time.
Yeah.
And one thing
Uh-huh.
I found is adding in a little teaspoon of psyllium husk, because like you said,
Uh-huh.
it's not wheat, so there's no gluten involved,
Hmm.
so you don't get the same stretchiness. But adding in the
Right.
psyllium husk gives it a little bit more stretch, and I think
Hmm.
it adds to the mouthfeel a little bit too. I have that almost every morning for a little snack. Um,
No, that's a great idea.
yeah, it's
So
really
if
good.
you're going to do that as a noodle, like if you're going to make that as a noodle, what
Yeah.
they would do is take that dough, maybe without, I don't know what the psyllium husk would do to it, but they would take, it's a really amazing device. The press is like right above the hot, boiling water.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of like the Japanese method is this very meticulous hand cut noodles, wrap it carefully, and then carefully coax it into boiling it. But Koreans do it a much quicker method, which is we're going to press it right into the boiling water. So it will not have any time to crack.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it is a different mindset and a different approach to food, which has caught on. No, it has caught on.
I think I'm gonna have to give it a try. I never even thought about making noodles out of it, but I'm gonna give it a try, and I'll let you in on the results once once I've tried it a couple of
Yeah, yeah,
times.
yeah. But go to a restaurant, go to a good place and see how they do it because it's a unique dish that it's one of my favorites. And after you have like a greasy barbecue, not that greasy because there's always kimchi and other stuff with it. After you have a barbecue meal and then having these chilled buckwheat noodles, it's so refreshing.
Mm.
You don't really need dessert like ice cream. It's like that is your dessert. That's what people look forward to in Korea. They're like, that is my dessert. I,
Wow.
I have been looking forward to having chilled buckwheat noodles.
Like it.
Even though barbecue is the main thing, they're like, I really want, after I eat that, I want to have this. That's going to complete my meal.
Daniel, you said your dream was to open a restaurant. So tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about Brew 314 and Brew 315.
Craft beer was getting big, and I knew that it was going to become a big trend, and I wanted to jump on it because when I first came to Korea in 2006, coffee was just taking off. And if I had done coffee and I knew coffee very well, like I knew how to make lattes and roast coffee and everything, but I just I wasn't in a position to do anything at that point because I was just starting my life in Korea, I would have been incredibly successful. And so when the craft beer trend hit, I was like, oh, this is an opportunity. And the startup costs and everything weren't very high. And I was like, you know what? I have some money saved up. I'm going to give this a try. And it was hard, but it wasn't incredibly difficult. And it has done well. And it's something I kind of have in my portfolio, but I don't actively work it or run it or do anything. My brother-in-law has taken it over. Um, it's just something that I I wanted to know the feasibility of doing it in Korea, and now I do know.
Hmm.
But it's not something that it's not something that people really aspire to in Korea. From a social standpoint, owning a restaurant, even how successful it is, it doesn't really, it doesn't put you in a high social standing. Not that I really care, but I do have kids and stuff. So if I go to meet other parents and stuff and they say, "Oh, so what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I own some restaurants." They're not going to think too highly of me.
Right.
Um, yeah,
So you say I do
but
food
yeah,
tours and I do food writing, and they're all over it.
no, 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 no. I just tell them that I have I have a company. I have a corporation, and I don't really have to say much more.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
One,
it's there's yeah, yeah. You don't want to reveal too much in Korea. That's the whole thing.
oh, interesting. Because it's all
Yeah.
about in the States, and I also found this difference in living in Portugal, but it's all in the States. As soon as you meet someone, the first question is, "Oh, what do you do?" And then you talk about your job. And
Mm,
I've talked about this with my friends back in the U.S. I'm like, I have friends here in Portugal. I've been here 2.5 years. I've had friends for two and a half
mm-hmm,
years here. I still don't know what their job is because you just
mm.
don't talk about it. I mean, it might come up. It's not like you're hiding it, but it's just not the major point of conversation here for whatever reason. It's just a cultural difference. And I kind of find it refreshing because, there's no kind of, in the States, there's always, when you're meeting someone new, there's always kind of that one-upsmanship or, what is your
Mm-hmm.
status type of thing. And here that seems to exist on a much lower plane.
It's a different way of kind of showing off. It's like having brand name shoes or something like that,
Hmm.
or
Right.
having a luxury sports car, or having the keychain for that or something like that. It's just absolutely ridiculous, or wearing like I don't know, something like you know a Patagonia shirt instead of like a
Yeah.
North Face shirt or something. It's just that sort of that brand recognition. Like we just had some overseas guests here, and we had some leadership training, and for our Korean staff that came to the meeting, we have to treat them. So we bought them all Starbucks coffee, and the people that were training, they were from Australia. They were like, "Why do you keep on buying Starbucks?" And like, well, our guides think of it as a very high end brand,
Right. Right.
so it shows our appreciation to them for doing a good job. Um, Whereas like here, like if I was bringing some other guests here to Korea, I would take them to a local artisan coffee or tea shop or something that people are kind of doing on their own. But yeah, Koreans don't really appreciate it as much. Yeah.
Daniel, before I let you go, I want to talk about ask you one last question because as I was going through your
Hmm.
website, I saw you mentioned kind of in passing that maybe Heather Graham, the American actress, was on one of your tours. And I'm not going to let you go until I get you to talk about that a little bit because I'm a big Heather Graham fan. I mean, I grew up watching her. So what can you tell
Oh
me?
yeah, I mean, yeah, that was a really incredible thing. I've met quite a few VIPs actually. And it was she had come here to do a show and she was a guest on that, and so I got to be on the show with her. And then the next day they asked me to take her out, and I was very happy to do so. Yeah, just got to talk with her and hang out, and I was starstruck as well because I remember growing up, one of my favorite movies are college pre-gaming movies was Swingers, which was ironic because we never would be able to get any girls or anything. But, but it was it was amazing to get to know her and just kind of show her some of the food and the cuisine. And she was really super nice about it. Yeah, it was an incredible kind of position, and it was opportunity. It's amazing how many really incredible people I've got to meet just through food and talking about food. Like people that are foodies are very interesting. They're passionate about something. They are yeah, they want to hear the story. You have the time and the stage to sit down and just kind of, with stage I mean the table, to just kind of talk. And it's a really nice opportunity to do that. Yeah.
Any other names you'd like
So
to drop before we let you go?
Bourdain was another one. I mean, that was
Sure.
just another one that was really amazing
Amazing.
just because
Yeah.
he really did influence my life before I had come to Korea, and then having the opportunity to actually meet him was really, really incredible. Yeah, it's been really fun. My journey with food and everything, and then it's just also incredible to see how quickly Korean food has kind of taken off all over the world. You know, it went from something that was kind of taboo and confused with other cuisines, and then it came out as this really niche, fun, cool sort of cuisine, and that's been really exciting to be part of.
Yeah, years ago when I was teaching English, you talked about being an English teacher. I did
Hmm.
ESL for a while. And in
Hmm.
Austin, Texas, one of my favorite students was from Korea. She was a lady who'd been in the U.S. for 30 years. And
Hmm.
her kids said, you've got to learn English. She did. She wound up getting her full citizenship, took the test, did everything. But at the end of the semester, she was so happy with what she had learned. She gave me this beautiful jar of kimchi, and it was not only was
Oh,
the kimchi wonderful, but it came in this beautiful decorated jar, and I was like, "This is one of the most special gifts I've ever received."
that's awesome. I'm glad that you appreciated that, because that shows a lot of love and care that she put in to give you that. Um, in Korea, I've seen so many people that, well, in the past, people would always give gifts of kimchi, and people didn't appreciate it. They would
Oh,
just, yeah, and it really is a special gift. So I'm glad that you appreciated and understood the time and the care that she put into that.
well, Daniel Gray from Seoul Eats, it's been great talking to you. This has been
Yeah,
fascinating. I
great talking
feel
with you
like
as well.
we've just kind of scratched the surface, which says to me, um, got to go over there and hang out and do a food tour with you. Folks can reach you at souleats.com. We'll also have a link in the show notes. But thank you so much for this conversation. It's been fascinating talking to you. And I feel like, it's like we've just been hanging out, enjoying a coffee and enjoying a beer together. Love to do it again sometime.
Sounds good. Let me know. Yeah, it's been great talking with you too, Brent. All right, thank you.
Okay, there goes Daniel Gray. What an interesting guy. He wants to experience it all, and that's something I can certainly understand and get behind 100%. You can book a tour and reach out to Daniel at souleats.com. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we're in Vancouver for Italian pasta topped with Japanese curry, a bar built in 24 hours, and Gassy Jack. Until then, get over to destinationeatdrink.com. I just posted a story about a wine fight in Spain. And by wine fight, I don't mean wineries battling over market share or who makes the best wine. I mean, a literal fight where wine is thrown at and sprayed on people. You can read that at destinationeatdrink.com/blog. I also just posted a new video about the famous foodie city of San Sebastian, Spain. It's pretty amazing, and you can see all the great stuff we ate by clicking on the video tab at destinationeatdrink.com or by going to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/destinationeatdrink946. Destination Eat Drink is distributed by the Radio Misfits Podcast Network and Ed Silla. Thank you, Ed. I'm Brent Peterson. I'll see you down the road.
Join us next week for another culinary adventure on Destination Eat Drink, a presentation of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network.